Sweet. So we're going to talk all about the thyroid today. This is really important because we're going to talk about both hypo and hyperthyroidism. What's really important is just talking about how the thyroid functions as a whole. It's estimated that about 10% of US adults have hypothyroidism, and most of them are women. And so our primary focus is going to be on the hypothyroid pattern itself. Just for a little overview for what the thyroid even is, we hear about it all the time, but it's this small butterfly shaped gland. It's located in your neck. It's like just below your Adam's apple, which most of us don't have them, but in that area. And it plays a crucial role in your body's ability to produce hormones that regulate your metabolism. Now, we know that metabolism is going to thing that dictates how processes occur within our cells to maintain energy. All right. That's why it's responsible for maintaining our metabolism and our energy production. It also regulates our what's called basal metabolic rate, so how we're burning calories at rest, and then additionally carbohydrate uptake, fatty acid breakdown, protein synthesis, right? That's really good for muscle building, and then temperature regulation. So a couple of things to point out here when it comes to our BMR. Thyroid hormones, so the presence of having them, which is something we want, not in an overage, we do want them, it's going to increase the basal metabolic rate, which is going to then increase the amount of energy that your body needs to function at rest. So you typically are burning calories really efficiently. As far as the carbohydrate uptake, the thyroid hormones influence the breakdown and utilization of carbs and fats for energy production. So they're going to help glucose uptake from the cells. They promote lipid breakdown. If we have dysfunction in the thyroid, that can lead to blood sugar dysregulation. And when it comes to temperature regulation, sometimes we'll be hypo or hyperthyroid, and that can correlate to an overage of heat production or an under production of heat. Starting with more of the education piece, just before we get into practical, as hypo and hyperthyroidism look very differently. And we want to make sure that if for some reason you fall into one of these buckets, and like I said, a couple of you, we've already tested for this and we know that, then you can identify it properly. So on the hypo side of things, it typically looks like slower metabolism. We see this chronic fatigue, we see weight gain, we see people who are cold all the time, always need a blanket. This was me a few years ago. Dry skin and hair, constipation is really common, memory issues, brain fog, swollen hands and feet, hair loss, and then usually elevated cholesterol. Like I said, most people fall in this bucket. Now, on the hyperthyroidism side of things, it almost seems like an overactive metabolism. And some of us feel like, that could be a really cool thing, but there is such thing as too much of a good thing. So we'll have an increased appetite. You're actually really sensitive to heat. You can become hot pretty easily. Bowel movements are on the opposite end of the spectrum. We do see bulging eyes, high blood pressure, that fast heart rate. And then sometimes we can even lose our cycle and see amenorrhea or trouble sleeping. The two minerals that are really important for thyroid production are iodine and selenium. So iodine itself is going to synthesize the thyroid hormones, and that's what helps regulate metabolism. It's really important when we are babies. And food sources of iodine come from seafood, seaweed, things like kelp, some dairy, but iodine definitely has less food sources than selenium does. Selenium is important because it helps us convert T4 to T3, and conversion can be a really big problem when we see active thyroid hormone or we see hormones that are really low in thyroid disorders. So it acts as an antioxidant. It's really helpful in our immune response. If you're getting sick all the time, it's super helpful there as well. And we typically see it in things like nuts and seeds, and particularly in Brazil nuts. Something that is fascinating is talking about all the foods that are really supportive for your thyroid. So go ahead, screenshot this, write it down if you want to, if you need a grocery list. I like to talk a little bit about liver and gut health because you are one piece, right? We talk about the thyroid, but it really is related to all these other systems because 60% of our thyroid hormone conversion is done in the liver and 20% of it is done in the gut. So if we're not working well, if our liver isn't working well, we'll typically see hypothyroidism. Okay, the liver helps convert the inactive thyroid hormone T4 into the active form of T3, which is what regulates our metabolism and overall health. So the liver could be not working well due to a bunch of reasons we've probably talked about before: liver disease, alcohol consumption, gut bugs, and that's what can create an underactive thyroid. So some of these markers that first one's beta glucuronidase. It is a measure of phase 2 liver detoxification. It is on the GI map. And high measures typically dictate liver congestion. When I first did one and I was in really poor shape, my beta glucuronidase marker was at 5,000. So my liver was not working very well, and now it's down to like the 800s, which is optimal. So just letting you know, it can come down very quickly with some lifestyle factors. The second test I run sometimes to look at liver bile acids, and what bile acids do is they come together with cholesterol to help release toxins from your system. So if they get caught up in line to, like I like to call it, a little toxin freeway, if we start to have a backup on our toxic freeway to be excreted out through your stool, then a bunch of other things get caught up. So if the bile acids are caught up, then hormones can get caught up, toxins get caught up, and your hormones cannot recycle as quickly or efficiently, and we can have an imbalance. So that's another indication that we can have some underconversion. Like I mentioned, the other place that thyroid hormone conversion takes place is in your gut. And common gut health issues include dysbiosis, which is all this. Look, these are real clients of mine, by the way. These are real jam apps I'm pulling from of people's guts and livers and all sorts of things. This person had a lot of bacteria present. You can have IBD, inflammation. When there's lots of inflammation, the reason this is important, when your gut is not in a good spot, it is unable to properly absorb the nutrients in your food. So we just talked about a really cool list of all the good foods that you can buy that are grass-fed and organic and cost you an arm and a leg, right? And you cannot be absorbing any of it if your gut's not in a good spot. So it's why we really work on our gut health. I also like to point out that the immune system plays a really substantial role in your gut balance as well. So this marker up here, the secretory IgA, is a marker of immune function. And if this is imbalanced, then we can see potential triggers for autoimmune thyroid disorders like Hashimoto's and Graves' disease. So those autoimmune conditions occur typically when the immune system is like mistaking your antibodies or other antibodies for ones that aren't yours. Now, I like to tell people all the time that we don't have to give up caffeine completely. We don't have to give up alcohol completely. It's really, what does your system look like? How resilient is your body to begin with to be able to handle those things? If we have an overage of inflammation, then it may be a good idea to reduce these things. I'm not going to talk about alcohol, but I will talk about caffeine. The reason that caffeine is really important to consider when it comes to our thyroid is that caffeine is a central nervous system stimulant. Okay. And what that does is it can increase the release of various hormones, including your thyroid hormone, which in the short term is kind of nice. You're like, cool, I feel really good. I have my little bump of energy. And then we have a little increase in thyroid hormones and it feels good. But have you ever, gone through periods of time where you have like 1 or 2 cups of coffee, it feels good. And then over time, that just doesn't do it for you anymore. You need like 3 or 4, right? Or energy drink days where you have like 200 milligrams and then you need 2. Right? We start to hit this state of exhaustion where there just isn't enough release anymore. Everybody here has had their cortisol tested, right? And if you've fallen, you've seen my roller coaster chart, right? We get up into that yellow portion where it's high at first, and then it starts to come down. Same thing can happen with the thyroid hormone. Another reason caffeine in excess is an issue is that it can interfere with the absorption of iodine, which we've already talked about is super important for the production of thyroid hormones. And then finally, like I mentioned, it's a stressor, right? It's going to stimulate the adrenal glands, which are responsible for producing the hormones like cortisol, which are involved in our fight or flight response. And so if we're chronically reliant or excessively consuming caffeine, then that can lead to dysregulation of cortisol and some of our adrenal patterns. So I don't like to say, you can't have caffeine at all, but it is why I want to educate you on reducing it. Alrighty, I'm going to swap over to the supplement side of things. Glucagon is used a lot of the time as an adaptogenic herb for cortisol control, but it actually can help support thyroid function because it is reducing stress. So not only is it reducing stress, but it can increase the levels of thyroid hormone itself. There's studies that have been done on this, as well as reducing fatigue and sometimes joint pains. Vitamin D is another good one as well. Vitamin D deficiency is often linked to autoimmune diseases like Hashimoto's. So of course we know our natural sunlight is going to be really helpful. You can also get vitamin D in foods, things like fatty fish, egg yolks, sometimes fortified dairy products, and also zinc. Zinc's a really good one too. Zinc plays a role in thyroid hormone production and regulation when it comes to conversion. So we've talked about conversion in the liver and the gut, and zinc can also help convert T4 to T3. So if we have a zinc deficiency, then we can have impaired thyroid function. And we do often see zinc deficiency with people with cortisol issues. So something to consider if you have zinc laying around. Other food sources of zinc are going to be more the seafoods and meats like oysters, red meat, poultry, nuts. I want to wrap it up with just general lifestyle tips for our thyroid. Okay, we've talked a lot about nutrition. I really wanted to focus on nutrition because a lot of things don't have to come from supplementation in this case. So we know that we need a good diet full of healthy fats, whole foods that contain iodine, selenium. And then I do like to mention just reducing or eliminating gluten. For those unfamiliar with gluten, it is sprayed with a product called Roundup, or wheat products are sprayed with this, and it contains something called glyphosate, which is extremely inflammatory and can cause gut lining issues, and also a phenomenon called molecular mimicry. So gluten proteins, they actually look like proteins found in the thyroid gland, and the immune system, when gluten is in the body and we have just an overage of inflammation, the immune system may accidentally attack the thyroid tissue due to the resemblance of gluten in the system. So it's just something that we like to reduce or eliminate if you have any sort of thyroid issues. Exercise is a really good thing. Okay, we know that it's going to help support our metabolism. We just want to make sure that we're not going too far with our exercise. All my gals that are bodybuilders, we've talked plenty about that. Making sure we're sleeping well. We talked a lot about that a few weeks ago. And then environmental toxins. So just minimizing exposure to toxins like pesticides and heavy metals and anything that's endocrine disrupting that can impact our thyroid. So always opting for organic foods when possible, natural cleaning and personal care products. Thyroid dysfunction is not usually the problem. It's a result of the problem, something further upstream. So that's why we're always testing our adrenals. We're looking at the gut, we're looking at the liver, and know that you are one person. Supporting all of this is helpful. So